Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 709 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, and want to do something a little bit different today. Going to basically turn our attention to some Ranger prospects, as well as the Hartford Wolf Pack as a whole. I mentioned, that I wanted to do a little bit better of a job keeping tabs on prospects, keeping tabs on the Hartford Wolf Pack this season, and given the fact that the Rangers did not play on Monday, do not play on Tuesday, and will not play on Wednesday, this seemed like a good day to do it. Once again, just checking with the Wolf Pack, see who's doing what, and which prospects are excelling for Hartford. But first of all, the team itself, the first look at this team, the first thing that you notice is that they are currently dead last out of 8 teams in the Atlantic Division. Although, you hear 8th place out of 8, you think like, man, must be a pretty miserable record. It's not really that bad. They're 4-4-1-2. That's wins, losses, overtime losses, and shootout losses. Overtime losses and shootout losses, both worth a point like they are in the NHL. So, they do have points in, let's see, that would be 7 out of 11 games, so that's not terrible, and in that time, they've also scored 30 goals and allowed 38 goals. But as far as, guys kind of leading the way for the Hartford Wolf Pack so far this season, your point leader for the Hartford Wolf Pack is defenseman Andy Welenski, because of course he is. Welenski, kind of a career minor leaguer, but so far this season for the Wolf Pack, he's got 1 goal and 7 assists. He's also a -7 in that time. He does have 4 assists in his last 3 games. And as I just mentioned, kind of a career AHLer. He is now 29 years old and has played just 46 career NHL games. Last played in the NHL in 2020, 2021. He had 13 games with the Ducks in that season. But he's someone that, I don't think the Rangers have any big plans for him, obviously. He's just kind of organizational depth. But I could see a situation where, possibly if there's some injuries or some ineffectiveness or whatever it might be, it's possible we could see Andy Welenski play, a couple of games with the Rangers this season, especially if there's a situation where, somebody's out of the lineup with a minor injury. If you just need kind of a plug-and-play kind of guy and a veteran-type player, again, he is 29 years old, I could see Welenski possibly getting the call there. Although, like I said, I don't think the Rangers have any grand plans for Andy Welenski, just kind of organizational depth, kind of in the role that Jared Tenorti used to play. You might see him play a couple games with the Rangers every now and then, but he's not somebody that, factors into the Rangers' long-term plans. I wouldn't think, at least. Somebody else leading the way for the Rangers, at least as far as points are concerned, is Tim Gettinger, and that's a name that's going to be familiar to a lot of Ranger fans. He seems to, every season, get a little bit of a cup of coffee with the Rangers at one time or another. A big guy, 6'6", 216 pounds. So far this season with the Wolfpack, 5 goals and 2 assists. So he is tied with 2 other players with 7 points, which is second most on the Hartford Wolfpack. Nice thing about Gettinger is he can play left wing and right wing and obviously has some size as well. It's interesting, though, because Gettinger has appeared in games with the Rangers in all of the previous 4 seasons. However, in that time, the 4 seasons combined, he has played a grand total of just 16 games with the Rangers. So when I said that, he's one of those guys that just kind of gets called up and has a cup of coffee, I wasn't kidding. That's pretty much how it goes with Tim Gettinger. He's just kind of a fill-in 4th-line type player. Last season, he did have a career-high 8 games with the Rangers, but it's kind of the same deal with Welenski, just at forward instead of defenseman. Now, Gettinger is younger. I should point that out. He's only 24 years old, but he's going to get called up once again if somebody's either hurt or ineffective or whatever the situation might be. I think it's also possible at some point that the Rangers, there's been some talk of this on social media. It's possible that the Rangers at some point this season, in an effort to clear some cap space and accrue more cap space heading into the trade deadline this season, it's possible that somebody like Sammy Blais or Ryan Reeves could get traded. Sammy Blais is making $1.525 million. Reeves is making $1.75 million. Neither of them, making a staggering amount, but when you're in the situation the Rangers are in and there is a cap crunch, every little bit helps. And I think that's a situation where, if they were to move on from Blais or Reeves and one of them gets traded, and I'm not campaigning for that. I think it's way too early to make a move like that. Reeves is going to be in and out of the lineup quite a bit. And Blais, I think they still want to see what he can do after his season was, cut short with the ACL injury last year. And, he's trying to kind of find his legs and become, a decent player for the New York Rangers. So I think you continue to ride it out with the two of them. But if there is a situation where the Rangers look to clear some cap space and one of those two guys gets traded, I think that bodes well for somebody like Tim Gettinger. If they were to trade, Ryan Reeves or a Sammy Blais, I think you could see Gettinger maybe plugged into that fourth line. The little we've seen of him with the Rangers, he does okay. Again, the upside isn't really there. But as far as just like a big, tough physical forward, he could be that guy for you. So, again, not a ton of upside, but somebody that can at least, do a decent job playing limited minutes on the fourth line. And then, you continue to kind of look at the point leaders for the Hartford Wolf Pack. Thus far this season, you go to guys like Johnny Brodzinski. He has 7 points. Turner Elson has 7 points. Brodzinski, we know about him as well. We've seen him play some games with the Rangers over the last handful of seasons here. He's also the captain of the Hartford Wolf Pack. 2 goals and 5 assists thus far for Johnny Brodzinski. It's kind of the same deal where, he could be called up if, somebody gets hurt. He seems to be one of the go-to guys that the Rangers look to if there's a situation where there's an injury and they just need to bring somebody up for, just a couple of games, whatever it might be. We've seen Johnny Brodzinski in that role. Brodzinski got a decent amount of games down the stretch last season, or, not so much down the stretch, but before the Rangers made all their moves that they made at the deadline. And then once those guys were brought in, Copp and Vetrano and Mott, Johnny Brodzinski was going to have a hard time finding his way into the lineup. But again, somebody that a little bit older, I believe he's now 28 years old, AHL, NHL swingman, and somebody that you can just kind of plug and play for a couple games if you're the Rangers and you just need somebody to fill in the short term. And Turner Elson, 30 years old. He's only played 3 career NHL games. 2 goals and 5 assists. I would imagine the Rangers would probably look to a Gettinger or a Brodzinski before they turn to a Turner Elson. But, something that all these players have in common, the first 4 that I just discussed here, is that none of them are really considered top-tier prospects. They can step in to the lineup every now and then and hold down the fort in a bottom 6, usually a fourth-line role. But again, the Rangers don't have any, grand plans for any of these players. So in just a second, I'm going to go ahead and kind of shift the attention to a couple of guys that could actually end up, playing a significant role for the Rangers, if not this season, then certainly in seasons to come, and some guys that have, contributed at least a little bit to the Hartford Wolf Pack. Going to talk about that. Going to also talk about a couple of moves that the Rangers have made somewhat recently. Hunter Skinner and Ryder Korczak, both Ranger prospects, sent from the Wolf Pack to the Jacksonville Icemen of the ECHL. So going to talk about that as well. And we'll do all that in just a second. But first, I just got to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Built Bar. Built Bar has some new, amazing, reimagined flavors, including cookie dough topper, coconut brownie bar, coconut brownie topper, and white chocolate peppermint granola. White chocolate peppermint granola is Built's take on the granola bar, so it's more filling and still insanely tasty. And candy cane brownie, puff. Built Puffs are like biting into the universe's most delicious cloud. First off, for anyone who hasn't tried Built Bars, they're literally the best tasting protein bars ever built. They're revolutionizing nutrition as we know it with 100% real chocolate. 17 grams of protein, and shockingly low sugar and calories, just 130 calories. I'm not kidding. There will be a time before you try these new Built flavors where you just can't even believe you ever tried a different protein bar other than Built. And the magical, wonderful time afterwards. You're probably wondering which new flavor is my favorite. An impossible question to answer, but I always got to go with anything having to do with brownies. So coconut brownie bar is certainly up there for me. Built, you got to try this. Get 15% off your order right now by using the code LOCKED15 at LOCKEDON15, at built.com. Once again, that is code LOCKEDON15 at built.com. All right, we just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And so like I mentioned just a second ago, I want to go ahead and kind of shift our attention from, the career AHL, NHL swingmen to some younger prospects that the Rangers, have drafted over the years. In one case, Gustav Fridal, we're going to talk about him, signed from the SHL. We're going to talk about them and, could we possibly see them with the Rangers at some point this season? And I want to start with Lauri Pajuniemi. Always a little bit of a tongue twister there, but I think I have that one right. He is a right winger 23 years old. The Rangers, there was some buzz about this pick. The Rangers seem to think that they got a little bit of a steal. They took him in the 5th round back in 2018. And something that stands out about Pajuniemi, both from going by scouting reports as well as, a couple of videos that the Wolf Pack have posted on their Twitter page, is that he's got a nasty shot. I mean, this kid can really shoot the puck, and it's shown in his stat line. He has 5 goals and 1 assist thus far this season. And, I don't know that we see him this year, but I will say if there's a situation where injuries begin to pile up, and if the Rangers decide that, they could really use a spark in the bottom 6, and if Pajuniemi produces in the Hartford Wolf Pack, and if he keeps lighting the lamp and keeps showing himself to be, a pretty dangerous sniper, then I could imagine a situation where he could be the first forward that gets called up from the Hartford Wolf Pack to the New York Rangers this season. I know technically that was already Julien Gauthier, but Gautier's been on the Rangers enough. As far as somebody, making his debut and getting his first shot at the NHL, I would say maybe Pajuniemi could be that guy. He could possibly... I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves here because it's not like he's got like these sparkling, unbelievable numbers, but he's done a nice job for himself. Again, 5 goals and 1 assist in 11 games with the Hartford Wolf Pack. But, somebody that the Rangers missed from last season, they picked him up at the trade deadline, and we've talked about him a lot, but that's Frank Vatrano. I do wonder if Pajuniemi, maybe not quite at Vatrano's level, and I don't think he'd be on the top line at all, but maybe there's a situation where, again, the Rangers feel like they need a little bit more out of their bottom 6, and they try to catch lightning in a bottle, and they see Pajuniemi as somebody that could be that sniper. Possible that we see him this season, and he's not super young either. I mean, he's 23 years old. It's pretty young, but, it's not like he's an 18 or 19-year-old, and there's no way he'd be ready for the NHL. So I think Pajuniemi could end up getting a look for the Rangers this season. I would probably bet against it, but I certainly would not rule it out. Somebody else that I think Ranger fans are certainly intrigued by, and somebody that we're going to keep our eye on, and I'm sure there's some Ranger fans out there keeping their eye on as well, but that's Will Cuylle. Cuylle, a little bit younger than Pajuniemi. He's just 20 years old. He is a left winger. He has scored 2 goals and has 3 assists in 11 games thus far with the Wolfpack, and he's one of the top prospects in the Ranger organization. I don't know exactly where he's ranked, but he's definitely up there. He was drafted in the 2nd round in 2020, went number 60 overall that season. Power forward who plays with a little bit of an edge. He's drawn comparisons to Matthew Korczak, Jamie Benn. I believe I even saw our old friend Brendan Lemieux. I saw his name kicked around. Milan Lucic, some of those guys that play physical but also have some talent to go along with it and can get under your skin a little bit, to be sure. And Cuylle, big guy, 6'4", 209 pounds. I would say he's the guy that would seemingly have the best chance of any player on the Wolfpack of getting caught up to the Rangers and just sticking there, just never going back down to the AHL, because the Rangers really do seem to like him, which you would expect. I mean, they drafted him in the 2nd round. You draft somebody in the first 2 rounds, maybe the first 3 rounds, you certainly have designs on them eventually playing for your team. And we will see. Again, it's kind of a similar situation with Pajuniemi where, okay, we need a spark here. The bottom 6 isn't cutting it. We're not getting enough secondary scoring, which may happen. It may not happen. It's a topic that we've discussed on here quite a bit. Where's the Rangers' depth scoring going to come from? If there's a situation where, again, they just need a little bit of a shakeup, or maybe one of the other bottom 6ers gets traded and they've got a spot that they need to fill, Will Cuylle could be one of the first guys that they call. I would put, him and Pajuniemi up there pretty high as far as, the guys that, the forwards who would be most likely to be recalled by the Rangers, if a spot opens up due to a trade, due to ineffectiveness, due to injury, whatever it might be. And I would put both of them up there with this player that I'm about to mention right now. I mentioned him just a second ago, but that is Gustav Rydahl. He's got 2 goals and 3 assists in 9 games. Now, it's a little bit different with Rydahl because the Rangers did not draft him. He's somebody that played for several seasons in the SHL, and the Rangers signed him to a 1-year deal this offseason with the idea that, he could maybe compete for, a job, could compete for being out there on opening night. And I think it was a legitimate competition between Rydahl and Ryan Carpenter. Both of them are centers, and they were both kind of gunning for that 4th-line center spot. But Rydahl ends up getting sent down, despite, I would say, outplaying Carpenter in the preseason. Part of the reason for that, and I think the Rangers even admitted this, but part of the reason for that is, of course, because Rydahl can be sent down to the AHL freely. They can just send him down. He doesn't have to pass through waivers. Whereas Carpenter, if they tried to send him down to the AHL at the start of the season or at any point going forward here, he will be exposed to waivers. I would imagine that Carpenter probably would not get claimed, but we've been surprised before. We saw Jared Tenorti get claimed earlier this season, and Julien Gauthier not get claimed earlier this season, and we saw Dryden Hunt get claimed earlier this season. So you never know for sure. But with Carpenter, he is what he is. He's a fourth-line center, making the league minimum. I haven't really talked about him a whole lot this season, but part of the reason for that is he just doesn't stand out that much. He's somebody that, with the Rangers, with this cap crunch and all these very highly paid players, you have to fill out the roster somehow with some inexpensive pieces. And of course, Carpenter certainly fits that, making the league minimum, bringing in somebody here who's good at faceoffs, a decent penalty killer, and that's about it. You do the best you can for a player that's only going to be making the league minimum. And, the Rangers went with Carpenter, and he's got some familiarity with Gallant. But if the Rangers decide that, Carpenter's not cutting it, Carpenter scored a goal on a nice deflection the other night. He also took a bad penalty in that game. And, the upside is just so limited. I don't think Gustav Rydahl has, a tremendously high upside either. He's not, a big-time scorer or anything like that. But if the Rangers feel that they can get a little bit more out of Rydahl than they're getting out of Carpenter, then that's a move that they can make at some point this season. It's going to depend a lot on, A, how Rydahl continues to fare with the Hartford Wolf Pack, and B, how Carpenter continues to fare with the New York Rangers. We saw him as a healthy scratch, I want to say in 2 out of the last 3 games, and he played in the most recent one. So we'll see. I mean, as far as the fourth-line center spot, it's still kind of game on there. So we'll see how it shakes out. But it would not shock me at all to see Gustav Rydahl get a chance at one time or another. And I think if there's a situation where the Rangers need to call up a center, I would imagine he'll be the guy, especially if it's, again, kind of a plug-and-play situation. Somebody's injured. We need to call somebody up for 2, 3, 4 games. I think it would be Rydahl if the Rangers are looking to bring up a center. Shifting our attention to defensemen, Matthew Robertson. This is somebody who had a chance to potentially claim an opening night roster spot, and to this day, I'm not really sure if that was considered a true open competition between him and Zach Jones, or if that was a little bit more fan-created by all of us, where Robertson versus Jones, Jones versus Robertson. It felt like Jones kind of had the inside track there, and of course, he maintained it, and he's been on the Rangers. And I think going into the season, they were looking at Libor Hajek as kind of the 7th defenseman, although recently, obviously, Hajek is kind of, I don't want to say taking a stranglehold on the 6th defenseman spot, but he's getting most of the games, and I think he's done all right. I know people show these charts on social media that suggest that Hajek was the worst player on the ice, and I kind of look at it and I'm like, okay, he didn't have a tremendous game, but what did he do wrong where he's supposedly this tremendous liability? I don't see it, him being really that much of a standout one way or the other. He's not playing spectacular hockey, but he's also not going out there and killing the Rangers. And like we've said before, I think that's what you want from your 6th defenseman. But, as far as upside is concerned, if the Rangers want to roll the dice and call up Matthew Robertson, that's something that certainly could also happen at some point this season as well. I would imagine if the Rangers are, again, to use that term again, looking to catch lightning in a bottle as far as defensemen are concerned, this might be your guy right here. He was taken in the 2nd round by the Rangers in 2019, went number 49 overall. He used to be Braden Schneider's defense partner when they were in the ECHL, so there's some familiarity there as well. By all accounts, a big, tough, physical defenseman. And, if we get to the midpoint of the season and the Rangers still don't like what they're getting out of Zach Jones and, Libor Hajek, maybe he's not really getting it done either, then I think Matthew Robertson's the guy that will be called up. And it could be a similar situation that we saw with Braden Schneider last season, where they get called up and it's all right, sink or swim. If you play well enough, you're going to stay and you're never going back down. If you don't play well enough, then you could be a healthy scratch or you could be sent back down to the Hartford Wolf Pack. I could see a similar situation like that potentially playing out for Matthew Robertson and the Rangers this season. Although I'm kind of keeping my fingers crossed that, that Hajek continues to at least play decent, acceptable hockey for as far as 6 defensemen are concerned, but even more so is Zach Jones eventually gets another chance and kind of just takes the ball and runs with it. I would like to see him eventually emerge as a 6th defenseman, but as I've discussed with a couple of you guys, so far I do think Hajek has outplayed Jones. I still think Jones should mix into the lineup every now and then, but fair's fair. I mean, Hajek has had the better of play between the two of them, and at least for the time being, I think Hajek has earned his spot as a 6th defenseman. And again, it's all subject to change, but for the time being, I think he's somebody that, has earned that spot and should deserve to keep playing in that role going forward. As far as goalies are concerned in the Hartford Wolf Pack, we've got Louis Domingue and Dylan Garand, and thus far, Louis Domingue, the career journeyman, Obviously, he played against the Rangers in the playoffs last season, subbing in for the Penguins. But he has outperformed Dylan Garand, at least so far, with the Hartford Wolf Pack. Domingue has a record of 3-1-2, a goals against average of .244, and a .913 save percentage. Garand, a former fourth-round pick by the New York Rangers in 2020, he thus far is 1-3-1. He has a save percentage of just .892 and a goals against average of .336. And so, given how they've both played, I would imagine that if somebody's going to be called up, it would probably be Louis Domingue, just because, I get the feeling the way the Rangers went about free agency this offseason, I don't think that they think that Dylan Garand is quite ready for the NHL. We'll see, again, how it all shakes out. But you bring in Yaroslav Halak on the one-year deal. I think he's kind of a stopgap as far as backup goalie is concerned. You bring in Louis Domingue on a 2-year deal, so you can switch to Domingue as your backup next season, or you can leave Domingue in the AHL where he is right now and roll with Dylan Garand as your backup. And I think that only time's going to tell there, and we'll see how it all shakes out. But if there was knock on wood, an injury to either Igor or even Halak, I think we're probably looking at a situation, at least right now, the way things stand, it'll probably be Louis Domingue that gets the call up to the New York Rangers. And I'm also going to talk about a couple of transactions that were made by the Rangers, or by the Wolfpack, as it were, with a couple of players, and we will do that in just a second. All right, so a couple of transactions made as far as the Wolfpack are concerned. We had in the last handful of days here, this is something that I've been looking to circle back to, and of course today, we're talking about the Hartford Wolf Pack and some big Ranger prospects that are playing there, so it's a good day to talk about this. But defenseman Hunter Skinner and forward Ryder Korczak both sent down from the Hartford Wolf Pack to the Jacksonville Icemen of the ECHL. They are the ECHL affiliate of the Rangers. And if you're not familiar with the ECHL, it's basically the level below the AHL. And, there have been guys that have played there and eventually play in the NHL, but I don't know. I mean, I was going to say that it might not be a good sign that these guys have been sent down, but they're both so young. We probably shouldn't read too much into it. But, bottom line, when Skinner was sent down, we had forward Cristiano Di Giacino called up to the Hartford Wolf Pack. Skinner had played in 5 games with the Pack so far this season. No points. He was a -1. And Skinner is a former 4th-round pick by the Rangers back in 2019. And like I was saying, I was going to say that it might not be the best sign that he's been sent down, and maybe it isn't. I thought maybe even going into training camp this season, and it's possible I jumped the gun here, but I thought he might at least be a dark horse candidate to maybe open the season with the Rangers. Certainly he was not the favorite, but we've seen them surprise us before. Keandre Miller certainly comes to mind, where they just kind of, plug one of their young defensemen into the opening night lineup and say sink or swim. And, with Miller, it's mostly worked out. Slow start for Miller this season, but I think he will work out in due time. But yeah, Skinner heads down to the ECHL. And Ryder Korczak, also going from the Wolfpack to the Jacksonville Icemen. Korczak is only 20 years old, 3rd-round pick by the Rangers back in 2021. He went number 75 overall that season. And I misspoke a second ago, though, actually. So Korczak does not go to the ECHL. He is going back to his junior team, which is the Moose Jaw Warriors of the WHL. And Korczak had no points in 5 games with the Hartford Wolf Pack and was a -4 so far this season. So that's pretty much it as far as, what's going on with the Hartford Wolf Pack and who's doing what and who's getting sent down and all that good stuff. It's something that, again, I want to continue to do from time to time. I think the next time we do a prospects episode, we'll maybe try to turn our attention away from the Wolf Pack and just turn it toward prospects who are playing on different teams and different leagues. Brian Hoffman certainly comes to mind. We'll update him. Obviously, he was recently traded, so we'll see how he's doing with his new team. But that's pretty much it for today. The only other thing that I wanted to do is, there were a couple episodes ago where I was talking about Vitali Kravtsov and, everything that's going on with him. And, he sits with a tooth infection and or the flu. They initially said it was the flu. Then Kravtsov said it was a tooth infection. Then apparently it was both. And, it's one of those things where, the first thing I have to say is that I'm not a doctor. We've made that very clear on this show. I am clearly not a medical professional here. But I was fortunate enough to have somebody listening to the show who is a medical professional who reach out to me on Twitter to just kind of weigh in as far as the Vitali Kravtsov situation, because I know a lot of Ranger fans were upset about him, not playing through the tooth infection or toothache or, whatever it was reported to be initially. It is now reportedly a tooth infection. And like I said, we received this message on Twitter from Akseli Lampinen, I hope I'm saying that right, from Tampere, Finland. And this is what they had to say about the entire situation with Vitali Kravtsov. Anybody watching on YouTube, you can see the note here. And anybody listening on audio, I will just go ahead and read it for you guys. Greetings, John. I wasn't able to find Locked On Rangers email, so I figured I'd just message you on here. I just finished listening to the latest episode, 708, and I want to provide a medical professional's point of view on the absence of Vitali Kravtsov. So as we all know, the reasons for his absence are supposedly the flu and an infected tooth. Thing is, both of these are infections, and it's probably not advised to do anything too physical when you have an infection, let alone two. A tooth infection can easily lead to a general infection, and the flu is already a relatively serious one of those. Now, if one doesn't rest enough when sick, the worst consequences could be myocarditis, which is infection of the heart, which can lead to death. We shouldn't forget about pneumonia either. The bottom line here is that it is in no way safe to play when you've got an infection, and the ones who do probably don't understand. It'll slow down the healing process in any case. Not ideal to play in a top league when you're not able to give your everything. And again, thank you so much for reaching out there. Like I said, I am not a doctor, so it's good to hear about a medical professional on such matters here. And again, I'm taking your word for it that you indeed are a medical professional. But yeah, I mean, that all makes sense to me. And like I said, I don't know enough about things like this to really voice that strong of an opinion on it. I'm sure there are players in this league who, they play with their heads on fire and they're not going to sit out if they can even stand up. But, the flu can really affect different people in different ways. And a tooth infection, I'd imagine it's kind of the same thing. And that can cause all kinds of problems. But I did notice Vitali Kravtsov is back to playing with the Rangers. We'll see if he's A, healthy enough to play against the Kraken on Thursday. And we will also see if he is B, put back into the lineup, even if he is healthy enough to play. We'll see if the Rangers would make him a healthy scratch, the first time he's available again, or if they'll just throw him right back out there. We shall see. And, see how the Rangers line up against the Seattle Kraken on Thursday night. Staying up late for that game, late night game, West Coast game. 4 straight games for the Rangers beginning at 10 or 10:30 Eastern time. So we'll see how many of you guys are able to stay up late with me for those games. But yeah, I figured that'll pretty much do it for today. The only other thing that I want to mention is that we will have a crossover episode with Erica Ayala of Locked On Seattle Kraken. That will be Thursday's episode. Probably going to premiere it at 12 o'clock midnight, Wednesday going into Thursday on both YouTube as well as audio platforms. And we've actually already recorded this episode. Very happy with how it came out. And the Kraken, one of those teams, to begin with, they're new in the league. But beyond that, the Rangers and Kraken don't really see each other that much. So it was a good time to do a crossover episode. I feel like I got to know the team quite a bit better, thanks to Erica and all her analysis and everything she had to say. But definitely come back and check out that episode tomorrow. But yeah, that will do it for today, guys. Once again, if you'd like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. And definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, @LO_NY_Rangers. Once again, that is @LO_NY_Rangers. And definitely subscribe to Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I'll see you next time. Thanks for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast. Catch up on the biggest stories of the day in sports, plus get instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. Locked On Sports Today, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts.